I think in hearing the previous two panels, the topic of data security, data privacy has crept into this conversation. I think it's very natural because if you think about the connected car potential thereof, the use of data and either coming from the car or from the person is a part of the mix. So this panel really want to get more into those two topics, in particular data security and then data privacy.
There's a lot of new connectivity pipes into the car, a lot of way to get information in and out of the car, a lot of connections in the car. And as we're discovering, sometimes those connections are getting into the car faster than the architects have been anticipating the ways to hack those technologies or the need to secure those technologies. It's not that the security capability isn't available, it's just that that wasn't prevalent in the minds of the architects and the engineers when they were designing those systems.
Yep.
And with the life cycle of designing technology in the automotive industry, what you're finding on the streets today is technology that actually those design cycles started 5, 6, 7 years ago. So we have to speed that up a little bit. And I think that's a real issue that is scaring people a bit today.
I see. So Drew, on that point though, is it a matter of the education of the engineer or the developer that needs to have a better understanding of security protocols and so on, or is it that other technologists need to get brought to the table to develop these systems?
It's a mix, right? I mean, security is a process, it's not a product.
Right.
You have to architect for security, but you also have to ensure behavioral change to make something truly secure. I mean, I think as Drew mentioned, the change that's happening right now as vehicles get connected is people just don't anticipate all the levels and layers of security. And if you do it right, what the impact and trade-offs are associated with that, right? When a secure device boots from scratch, it has to do work to actually authenticate and authorize itself to be on the network. Consumers aren't used to turning the key and having to wait for the car to do that. Right? So we have to both meet consumer expectations, but also ensure that we're developing and architecting, again, as Drew mentioned, it correctly. The car is not a phone. I mean, John, you and I were talking about this before, right? The car is actually a network of computers. We need to secure that network. We know how to do it. It's great products from many companies that know how to do that. We have to aggregate that information. We know how to do that. We have to then, through a gateway, connect that to a cloud service, and there's many different connection points in between that need to be secure. And then the behavioral activities and the actual implementation of security at the OEM or cloud layer is also something that needs to be taken into account. So we're working with customers to get them to understand all the different layers of security. We've done this in other industries very successfully. We have to bring that knowledge to automotive, do it right the first time, make sure that the excitement and hype around hacking cars is something we can deal with.
The security technology is more mature in other industries. The challenge facing automotive is the same challenge that faces the whole new emerging Internet of Things, which is how you take existing policy solutions, things like transparency and consumer choice, and you apply them in an ecosystem that's unfamiliar to the consumer and where perhaps the interface is one that doesn't lend itself to a pop-up notice that you click on or something like that. So auto is facing it, but so are connected thermostats and wearable devices and things like that too. So it's interesting to see. I think there'll be different solutions for different kinds of devices, and auto is going to come up with their own standards.
So the very nature of the user interface is presenting a different challenge, if you will, relative to our internet experience on the desktop, laptops, or even our mobile devices. So with that, I'm going to lead into Avery's viewpoint, working at the AAA and having millions of customers. How do you see the nature of the problem in regards to security or privacy?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, and this goes really with any technology. I mean, AAA has certainly seen, through the 110 years that we've been around, new technology comes with consumer questions and consumer concerns. If you're not sure how to use a vehicle with anti-lock brakes correctly, it can be very confusing. And with a connected car ecosystem, and we've seen this in other sectors as well, a lot of it is a lack of understanding. It's new technology. It's not something that maybe is as easily understood as the traditional vehicle, which doesn't come with dozens of computers. And that at the end of the day, I think that the principles that Kelly mentioned earlier, these sorts of principles are going to be integral to setting a groundwork for consumer acceptance of this technology. And as we all kind of said to begin with, that's really the crux here. If consumers don't accept this technology, if they're not willing to use it, if they don't want to use the technology, we're not going to see the benefits of connected cars that we talked about in the previous panel about big data. If people are not willing to share their location and share traffic information with Waze doesn't function anymore. So it's that consumer trust and consumer understanding that's so important. I think that the principles provide a really good discussion point and a point for discussion among industry and among this sort of audience. At the end of the day, it comes down to a question of what is the consumer seeing? I think it's the kind of the fruits of these sorts of principles. When you get into a vehicle or when you buy a vehicle from a dealer, when you drive off that lot, what is your experience with the car? Do you feel like you have a good grasp of how this technology works, why it's beneficial to you, and what are the benefits of sharing your data or providing information to the auto manufacturer or to a Pandora or to whomever the service you're working with? What's your level of comfort and confidence with the technology you're using? And that's both from a security standpoint as well as a privacy standpoint. And that really comes down to consumer education and consumer acceptance of the technology.
Right.